Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Conversations on Conversations, where each week we explore a topic to help us have more meaningful conversations with ourselves and with each other. I'm your host, Sarah Noll Wilson, and I think I say this every week. I'm so excited, and it's always genuine, but I'm really excited to introduce this week's guest and to dig into the topic of work-life harmony. So our guest this week is Andre Young. And let me tell you about his formal bio and then how we connected, and then we'll bring him onto the show. So Andre Young is a professional speaker, author, leadership trainer, and founder of You Evolving Now. He worked as a mental health therapist for 19 years, which we'll get into, has been an employee, a business owner, self-employed, played sports at every level from high school to professional, and has written 4 books with the focus of enhancing leadership and work-life harmony. And I just want to give a quick shout out that his most recent book, The Leader's Toolbox, just launched on December 13th. And you can purchase that anywhere books are sold. Just saw that this morning. And, I love your phrase here that he encourages leaders to stop being busy and start being better. So welcome to the show, Andre.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's a pleasure being here. And you guys listening, thank you for letting us steal some of your time. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, time is the most precious gift people give us. And so I appreciate that intro. Andre and I, we connected. We were speaking at a conference together. And when we were on the speaker call, there was something about how he was talking and how he was thinking that piqued my interest. And so the more I started to learn about the work he did, and then we had a chance to connect on there and a chance to connect afterwards, I knew that he was definitely somebody that I wanted to introduce you all to. So first, Andre, before we get into the meat of the content, what else do you want people to know about you?
What else? That we're all a lot of things, so I'm a father of 4, and I giggle when I say it. I have a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So, I did that. It's really cool. To know about me, it's an honor. I honestly feel like it's an honor to wake up every single day and I get to do what I do for a living. And that's a testament to a lot of choices, but also wording. Success in leadership is a language. And when we change our language, we can change our life. So for everybody out there saying what you have to do, 1, no, you don't. And most of the things that we complain about, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. More than half of them will trade places with you and take everything you have in a snap of a finger. So start getting to do instead of having to do.
The change your language, change your world. I mean, that's the words we use create our worlds. It creates our reality. And sometimes I think we don't realize the power, right? No. It's like shooting on yourself. It's saying, oh, I have to do this instead of like, I get to do this and honoring when, it's okay that this is hard right now. And how do I want to move through in a way that feels good to me?
You'll take all of the English classes, you'll get the credits for it, but they never talk about how to speak to yourself. Because I call it the bully word. So I get to teach it worldwide, and I won't get into all of them, but if, can't, try, just, only, should, and deserve. And we'll throw happy in there as the bonus word. They will bully you out of the life you want. They will bully you out of your leadership. And when you use them with other people, you're wrong. Sarah, if I would say, well, you're just you're only it might be a fight because it's offensive, but we might say it to ourselves. How many times? Guys out there listening, you want to see the power of words? Go home and tell your wife what she should do and watch how your night changes. But yet we should ourselves. We might should other people. So these bully words, we have to learn what they are and what to replace them with. And it starts to become like offensive when you hear other people say it. And they'll start to change who you are, and you'll start to attract a different type of person, actually.
Yeah, it's like seeing the Matrix. Suddenly you start, seeing it everywhere. I didn't catch all of them. You moved through them really fast, so I'll have to go back and listen on the replay. But 2 that you threw in at the end, deserve. Say more about that.
Deserve.
And happy.
Deserve is the biggest peacock word in our language. You want to stick your chest out and peacock and have a professional or personal temper tantrum. It's deserved. I deserve that raise. I deserve that job. I deserve that relationship. The truth is, and the fact is, that you don't have it. So when we take away what we feel like we deserve and are entitled to, and typically we feel entitled because we've been willing to do something our way. When you take deserve off the table and you replace it with what I call the get great question, life gets better. And the get great question says, Sarah, I deserve that raise. Well, instead of, Sarah, I want to be the greatest employee that's ever worked here. I do want a raise. What do you and this company need most from me right now? I have no idea what you're going to say. Whatever you say, I don't have to do. But I can no longer complain about what I don't get. Whatever you say, I have an opportunity to now marry what I want to do with what you need most, and simply a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but not so much that I wind up resenting you or the task. So it's called the get great question. Take deserve out of the picture. My son played basketball. I have 2 sons. And he wanted to get more playing time. I told him the get great question. He would sound crazy to go to his coach and say, I deserve to be on the court. Because whether you're right or wrong, you're not on the court, and that's not the way to get on the court.
Yeah.
So instead, he said, the get great question, I'm standing 5 feet away from him. Coach, I want to be great here. I want to earn more playing time. What do you need most from me right now? And the coach said what most leaders do. They answered and responded in the most lazy way possible. Just keep doing what you're doing. Been there?
Yeah. Heard it, seen it. Probably have said it myself, if let's be real, honest.
And when I teach people, employees or other people, one, we have to understand why they said that. One, they may not, first off, they may not be thinking quick on their feet. They may not believe that you can handle their truth right now. Maybe they don't even know the answer to your question because they haven't thought of it. Maybe they got to pee and you interrupted them from going to the bathroom for their lunch break. Maybe they're hangry and they don't want to talk. There could be 1,000 reasons why. So I taught my son, and I'll teach you guys the judo of just keep doing what you're doing. Hey, I appreciate you saying that, coach, husband, wife, boss, whoever. I appreciate you saying that. It really means a lot. But I really do want to know. And I know you're busy now, but how about I check in later in the week, where I'm available Monday at 1 o'clock, Thursday at 3. I want to ask, and if the answer is the same, then great. If not, I want to know. And what that does, it allows them permission to think. It allows them to go back to their definition of busy. You can go back to your definition of busy. And now when we have this conversation, it's not emotionally volatile. So that's the way around that I found work best.
It's interesting. One of the things that I was thinking of is, 2 things that I want to highlight of what you said. The first is the marrying of what you're willing to, what you want to do with what they need you to do, and within the amount of with how much you want to give to it, right? So there is some ownership and boundaries and accountability with it. But when you said real quickly, they might not think you're ready for the truth. And what was coming up for me is what would that conversation look like? And I want to be clear, I'm ready for the truth. Even just using that again in the power of language, right? I think that's a real gift of a phrase of not even be aware of that, but how can we use that, right, in those moments? Okay, so we're already getting into it, but I do want to take a step back because I want people to understand more of your journey, because you have taken such an interesting path to get here. And it's, I think it's really important for folks to understand. So from where you sort of and you can decide the start, but, you spent a lot of time, working in the mental health, industry, as well as industry, but in the mental health field. But talk to us about your journey from where you started your career to where you are now in the work that you're doing.
Well, it's a great start. Mental health was my first, well, not my first love. Football was my first love. Mental
So is
health
that
was
what you played? Sorry, is that what you played then?
I played
Remind
football.
me.
Yeah, I played
Yeah, okay.
high school and college, and I worked out with New England Patriots, and that lasted literally all of 5 minutes. And then I took 8 years off. I was done. Like I played semi-pro
Mhm.
after that. Did really well, but I knew it was time. I went and got my master's. I really delved into my career. 8 years later, I'm at the gym. A guy's following me around to the point I'm getting nervous. Like, what's going on here? Why are you following me around in the gym? And he wound up being a coach for arena football. I reluctantly, I was 29, I was done. I made, long story short, I made the team, blew my hamstring out, and got released week 5 of the season. So it was a great experience, but it was all over the place, and it was a lot of fun. But I say all of that to say, my first love was football.
Sure.
Out of college, then I'm just like, okay, well, what the heck am I going to do? Because all I ever wanted to do was football.
Yeah.
So I was invited to come to an interview for a residential treatment facility. So I started working there and then
Mm.
worked my way up. I ran a unit of male sex offenders, ages 13 to 21, and then in alternative schools and psych wards and home therapy. And I did everything but addiction. And to be honest, I loved it so much. I'm a nerd about anything that I love. So I want everybody to be a nerd about what they do. And I thought I would retire doing it. And I honestly fell out of love with the system and I burnt out of that job. So
Mm.
I tell people all of the time, in no joking way, but I do laugh. I have been the world's best employee at one point in my life. And I have been the world's worst employee at one point in my life due to burning out of a job. And I was right about
Mm.
everything that I was saying. But I was so wrong about how often I said it, who I said it to, how I disconnected from my staff and my passion because of it.
Mm.
So I really share now, I get to share around the world how to prevent or lead through burnout. Um, then I went through a divorce right at that time. So I'm burning
Mm.
out and going through a divorce. So the business started because I one day said, I'm a good person. I didn't do everything right in marriage, and most people don't, especially the first time. And I said, there's a lot of people like me, and particularly men at that time,
Mm.
that are only failing because they have nowhere good to go and no one good to do it with.
Mm.
So I created this organization for men, and it was all the point of go home, return home better than simply relieved from a guy's night out.
Mm.
And it kept growing out of my living room into cafe spots and then conferences and then a women's division and youth division and college division. And as successful as it was as a part-time thing, I really wanted to do it and have a lifestyle and be, and really take care of my family and my soul with it. But I knew it was going to die. And I say that because when you do something great like that, it's really a wellness thing. And most
Mhm.
people aren't concerned about being well until they're sick.
Yeah,
And
you
they
can
don't
say,
want to
well,
spend
yeah,
their
right.
time or
Mhm.
their money to get well. So
Mm.
I said, my passion, my business has to go to where people already are, at work, at
Mm.
school, and on their phones. Their business pays for it. I can do it during work. They love it, and dot, 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 dot. And then it just really, boom, just took off once I started to add the leadership part to it.
Yeah. Let's spend some time, because we've explored burnout before, and I think it's always worthwhile to talk about, especially right now. We just had Julie Turney on, who does a lot of work specifically with HR professionals and helping them navigate. You said something really beautiful of like you loved what you did, but you fell out of love with the system. And that, I think that that is such a powerful perspective that I certainly can relate to. And that's one of the challenges with burnout, having experienced it myself at multiple times in my life, is that there can be lots of factors. And that point of we don't think about our wellness until we're not well is so spot on. And so, there's a couple of places I want to enter into this conversation, but the first is what are you observing now, because there's been right? The fatigue from everything that's happened over the last few years, right? So pandemic, racial injustice, economic uncertainty, political divide. I mean, like the list goes on and on and on. What are some of the things that you are seeing that might be like new patterns related to burnout or watch outs that people need to be thinking about? Because again, it's like you don't realize you're burnt out until you're like, how do we catch ourselves when we're crisping? like when, how do we, I'm thinking for myself.
I'll attack it from a few different directions because the real problem has never changed. The real problem is still the same, which is that people tend to do a poor job of putting them in their own calendar. Okay? Most people, bosses, coworkers, kids, they're not going to say, hey, you look really burnt out and fried and you should really take a vacation and do this or that. Like, no, as long as you keep giving, they'll keep taking. So the problem boils down to most people do a poor job of self-care until they need it. We could talk about what to do about that. But the new way the problem has been caused is with hybrid and remote work. Companies thought that they wouldn't be as productive. They found out that they could be as productive, if not more. The problem is the people that are doing the work, their roles have been more condensed and consolidated more than ever before. See, before you got up and you went to work, you drove to work and complained about the commute, went to work, complained about the drive home, but those commute times were de-escalation periods. They were you time. I remember working an hour and a half away. I remember driving an hour and a half to work. Now that's excessive for some not. And there were times in that drive, Sarah, where I didn't listen to anything on the radio. I had process time, downtime, thought time, and although I didn't have a lot of time in the day, I had me time.
Yeah.
I did what I wanted in that car. So even if it's a 5-minute drive home from work, still you. Now let's do hybrid and remote work. You wake up, most people, which I tell them not to do, and we talk about in training they grab their phone and the first thing they do is check emails. So you already started in the black abyss and this hole of quicksand that you can't get out of. That's how you started the day. And then you started right with work. And then now your kids may be home. I got a 3-year-old that's home with us all the time. So you're right in mom and dad mode all the time. As the phone may never stop ringing and dinging with work, even though it's after 5 o'clock. You're just on autopilot, still doing work and still attached to it. You don't have that de-escalation drive home. So now all of a sudden, soon as you shut down your laptop, you're a professional Uber driver for your kids that got to go to their 13th billionth practice of the year. So I can go on, but you get the point. Our roles are constantly in our face with no break. So unless we get intentional, and they're small things. For me, I don't check, my email is not the first thing I check. Be sure you're putting something in your mind and your body and spirit that makes you better instead of bitter before you touch work. The time frame that you take is up to you. Be sure when you shut down that laptop, what do you need to return to your life the same way you would want your employee walking through the door? You just smiled. Most of us will smile and be our best selves at work and then come home and we're just like Godzilla. Everybody stabs, So know what you need. Some people might need, let me shower this day off. Let me take the dog for a walk. I go to the gym 3 days a week. It's a reset. It's a second wind. And the only person stopping you from doing any of that is you. Put you in your calendar, even monthly. Put something you like, and so it's a light at the end of the tunnel. Something. There's
a couple of things that really resonate for me, and it's interesting again to hear language. There's lots of reasons why it's difficult for us to put ourselves in the calendar. Some of that is how we've been conditioned, right? Like as a woman, I've been very conditioned to like always give and put everyone else first and to nurture and to take care. And it's selfish, right? When you look at parents, I feel like every parent I've talked to is like, I love my kids and sometimes I hate my kids and sometimes I'm so glad I did it. And I'm also so like, wondering why did I do this to myself, and feeling guilty for doing that. But that point of the boundaries have crossed so much more. And it's interesting to hear your language of de-escalation, because something that I've had to really work on, I call it toggling. Like, how do I toggle? What's the ritual that I have to do to transition? Because it is real easy. It's just so easy to stay connected. It's so easy to
Yes.
write that default that you don't even think about it. And you're like on your phone checking your email, and suddenly your husband, Nick, I'm talking about a friend here, but suddenly your husband, Nick, is like, are you checking email right now? And you're like, I didn't even realize I was.
Right.
And I think that that's such a great practice for us to think about, is like, what is that proper effective start? Because it can be so easy to just roll out of bed and sit down at your desk and you just start going. But how do you my therapist and I, we talk about it is like, how do you start well? How do you start well for you?
Mhm.
What is it that you need? And then what's that closure? And, for me, I know the thing that I've learned is, like a shower, just like a physical transition, changing clothes, certainly moving out of the space and sort of like shutting the laptop and being like, I'm done. But I think that
Yes.
that's such a gift for us to think about what is that de-escalation period, and that processing period, like that it isn't just the toggling, but like the example you shared of being in the car and just like, I'm processing what the heck happened during the day and like managing those
Or
emotions.
absolutely nothing. Like,
Yeah.
there's times I thought nothing on that, and I was on autopilot. Oh, I'm home. Like, so it shuts your brain off. From a closure standpoint, one of the things that I teach from my 5 points of the day, you want to live your best life, professionally or personally, it's these 5 things. It's not about time, it's about intent and consistency. The last point, and you mentioned women, especially for women. At the end of the night, I want to teach you right now, everybody listening, I want to teach you the best question a human being can ask themselves. Before you close your eyes to go to bed at night, and I take the weekends off, you could do them 7 days a week if you like. Ask yourself very quietly, what was my biggest accomplishment of the day? Having an answer to that question will allow you to have won the day instead of the day consistently kicking your butt. I hear so many people, men and women, but mostly women, that they lay in bed at night and all they can think of is all the things they didn't get done today and all of the things that they have to do tomorrow. Contrastly, waking up in the morning, another point of the day, the second point, when you make your list of the things you get to do, put wins at the top of your page. Because that list that we have, especially our type A people that like crossing off the list, I guarantee you the list is nice and it will make you busy and productive, but not always better. So what's your wins? So if nothing gets crossed off, I know I typically have about 2 to 3 wins, but my list is 20 things long. My list will never end.
Right.
So those are 2 real points. Like, at the end of the night, what was my biggest accomplishment? If you want to take it up a level, that person laying next to you at night, they got to answer if you ask.
Yeah. Well,
Your kids got to answer if you ask.
Yeah. Well, and that, so that brings me to this, like, reframing. I think that one of the things that I see certainly in American culture, compared to other cultures that we have the privilege of working in, is we do have this high urgent, high hustle culture, this, right, always on, this perfectionism culture, right? There's all this stuff that, when we think of, there is this value on being busy. And, so, and I think when I hear the word accomplishment, I could see a potential trap is, and that doesn't have to be with work. And that doesn't even have to be like, quote unquote, productive. Maybe my accomplishment was that I gave myself time to rest. My accomplishment today was that I was present with myself. So I want to, that's something that I want to tease out, because I think that it can be, we part of our, I observe this and I see this is like, we have such this high value on like hustle and busy and cranking and grinding. And I don't know, like all of the words. And And we have such an unhealthy relationship with rest,
Yeah.
with being present with whoever is in
Yep.
front of us, with, self-care, right? Like
I'm going
it
to tell
shouldn't
you
be
a
so
quick
hard.
story. I'm going to
Okay.
tell you a quick story about that I that I lived firsthand. Right. So I've created my business to be able to work from home, to be remote. It was, even pre-COVID, and I can move how I like. So I do wake up and I'm on go 1,000%. I am. However, I like my cigars. So I know that throughout the day, and like my wife was working her job 9 to 5, and she was at work in the office. My kids are at school. I can put on an episode of Game of Thrones midday and watch it if I want it. I can go get a cigar at the cigar bar a half hour away. Good. Now COVID happens.
Mm.
My wife, has recently started her own lifestyle blog, so she's getting into the entrepreneur spirit. However, that's brand new. She was a 9 to 5er, a very good 9 to 5er, the best 9 to 5er in the world. So she's now home with me. And then her in-laws are home with me watching, our little Sky 2 or 3 days a week. All of a sudden, me going to get that cigar midday, even though I have built my business and my life to be able to do it, bothers the heck out of them.
Mm.
And I said, well, one, I'm protecting myself. I'm not going to feel guilty about the life and lifestyle I created. But given what you said, the hustle, like you work, and you work. What do you mean you're going to go get a cigar? What do you mean you're going to go do this? And how dare you do this? If I'm sitting here working, like, it's okay to do these things. And here's the thing. I don't need a lot of rest. When we talk about rest, I don't need a lot of rest. Nor do I think a lot of people don't need as much rest as we think. However, we do need time to recover. You need time to recover and recoup. I was an athlete. That's why you don't get a whole lot of rest during the season.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's proper recovery time for each individual, and that's different. So the things that you're putting in your calendar, me and that cigar, that's 45-minute recovery and reflection and recouping. And my goal, if I'm smart, and if you're smart, be so great coming back from those things that the people in your life like how you are, so they give you permission to go do it. But it was so funny that you say that, because me taking that cigar, or I feel guilty if I put my feet up and watch a show midday. Like, I know how much money I just made today.
Yeah.
As a 9 to 5er, I know what you make per day.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, I can make a year's worth of salary in 2 hours. My day's done.
Right.
So it's it was really interesting to watch play out and how it's soothed out over the years.
It's right. It's like rules. They're not rules, but they are rules that we've created. And sometimes we push against those and to challenge those, whether it's for ourselves or for other people, of like, yeah, actually it's okay that I'm not, this is okay. One of the things in building the company, our company, is I was really passionate about, similar to what you were talking about. When I first went on my own, it was just me. And I remember feeling this really profound sense of understanding the difference between having flexibility over my time and having total freedom over my time. And I was very fortunate at my last company to have really an incredible amount of flexibility. But like you said, being able to create the day that I wanted, how I wanted, to manage my time, the lack of boundaries didn't always serve me from my ADHD perspective. But I remember this sense of, I've never experienced this kind of freedom. And as I bring on people and we expand the team and we have more team members, how do we create that system for them? And one of the things that was a funny moment was when new people have come on to the team, and I'm thinking about my one colleague, Amy, who came from education system, 9 to 5, very structured, very contract hours driven, all of that. Watching her challenge the assumptions, the rules that she was told, and almost like push herself. So one day she said, I know that we can control our day, and there's like clarity on when we need to meet and how often we need to respond, like what the timeliness, but the rest of it is like, that's your day, like however you want to. And so she said, so I hope it's okay, but I ran an errand this afternoon and I had to tell myself it's okay for me to run the errand this afternoon because Sarah said that we're trying to build this company for humans. And, and it was just like an interesting moment to watch her push against those norms, right?
Right. Right.
And like, so and I've had to, I've had to push against those and I would love to see more because it's so necessary for us to take care of ourselves. So one of the things I am curious about, I know that there's a reason that you don't use the term work-life balance. I know that I have my relationship with that phrasing and why I think it's problematic. So talk to me about why you use the language of work-life harmony.
Well, work-life balance, I have found that, I mean, you get this vision of the scales and the
Yeah.
equality. And I don't think look, you want to stress yourself out, try to make things perfectly balanced. And it's
Yeah.
also assuming that the people in your life all want the same amount of time from you anyway. So we stress ourselves out assuming that we need it perfectly balanced. Where, look, my wife and I have different love languages. I'm quality
Mm.
time. She is a very isolatory individual that can do her thing and spend a half hour with me cuddled up to watch a show at the end of the night, and it's just fine. So
Yeah.
this whole balance thing will drive you crazy. Not to mention, even if you can make it perfect, which it doesn't need to be, it's impossible to maintain.
Yeah.
So I like work-life harmony, and it goes back to that marriage. I call it a leader's marriage. Leaders know how to marry what they want to do and give with what the person receiving their effort needs most from them right now.
Can you say that? Wait, say that
So,
again. Sorry, I want to hear
yeah,
that again.
sure. A leader's marriage.
Yeah.
Marry what you want to do and give with what the person receiving your effort needs most from you right now.
Mm. Mm.
And I don't mean guessing what they want from you,
Mm-hmm.
asking what they want from you. We already talked about how to ask. So, for instance, for me, I have two businesses, my speaking and training business, and I also run the Andre Young Foundation, my nonprofit. I run two successful businesses and have four kids, ages 23 to 3 years old. I have no balance, but I have a whole lot of harmony because I know what my business requires from me. I know what my foundation requires from me. I know what my board, the board requires from me and how they want it. I know what each child needs and wants most from me right now and my wife. It's not all balanced and equal. My 23-year-old, I barely see. She's in the world fluttering around like a butterfly. So I don't need to spend as much time with her as I do my 15-year-old who lives with me all the time.
Yeah.
And then a 3-year-old that's not involved in sports yet. Like everybody needs something different from dad or from mom or from you. Marry what you want to do with what they need. And then you'll start to get this harmony because you'll feel at peace. You're not shooting everything. So, and then you got to ask frequently so you know you're not giving old wants. You're not satisfying old wants and needs that don't matter anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that point that you made too of like, and don't assume. I think that that's something that, so much of the work that we do and that I'm really passionate about is, right, building those powerful partnerships, building really healthy relationships, building those high psychologically safe environments. And one of the things that we know is that when there are issues, and I appreciate that you brought up like the love languages is such a good example of that, is when there's issues in relationships, it's usually because we have a need that's not being met, a value
Yeah,
that's being stepped on, and how
yeah.
important it is for us to ask and have those conversations. And so I wonder, do you have some tips or strategies that you use, whether it's your personal life, whether it's the clients that you work with, of what do those conversations look like? Because so many of us, well, one, many of us don't even always know or have named our needs. We just know we're frustrated with you.
Yeah.
Like we just
Right.
know we're irritated.
And I'll tell you, for me, it's a lot harder because I spent 19 years as a therapist. I do know me and I have the language.
Yeah.
So having the language when the other people around you don't can get very lonely and frustrating. So
Mm.
you're choosing to be patient.
Mm.
Um, but it doesn't
That
mean it's not
resonates.
hurtful sometimes, because you're like, okay. So to answer your question professionally, one of the things that I learned, especially as an entrepreneur and a leader, when I first had my business, I wanted to spew my menu all over people. I was excited about it. So I want to share what I'm excited about. But if it doesn't meet your deepest need, I'm just wasting your time and not making any money. So I flipped it, and I now say, well, after the hi, how are you, the connection, what is it that you would want to get out of bringing someone like me in? What do you want to get out of working with someone like me? So what it suggests is, one, what do you want to get? Do they know? And then two, let's not assume that I'm the person. So whatever you say, I can match it to what I have. I can customize, I can create, or I can refer. And now everybody takes a deep breath, and now I get to listen. They'll tell me their pain. Now, either I have the medicine or I don't. And when I do have the medicine, I can tell you the proper doses, and now we can customize. Now it's all about timing and budget. And that's always something that we can come up with. On a personal level, I don't want to be redundant. It's that get great question. However, I will say this. So I can come to my wife, or I can come to, hey, I see you struggling. We work at home with a 3-year-old. She's busy with her work and starting her business. I see you struggling. I see you on wit's end. I don't want to assume that what she needs. I mean, it's nice that I will, and you want to be appreciated for it. But if it's not meeting her deepest need, it doesn't matter as much. So, honey, baby, what is it that you need most from me right now? How can I help you? I was thinking this. And so you can either let them speak, or leaders accompany their a problem with a solution. Hey, I was thinking I'll put the baby to sleep, and do nap time from here to here. Give you a something thing. My son has basketball games. I'll start bringing her. She won't have her nap, but she'll come to me with the games, and they'll give you like 3 hours. What do you like about that? Is there anything you change? So you can ask the get great question, or you can bring a suggested solution and say, hey, what do you like about it? And is there anything that you would change? And that has really worked phenomenally for me, both professionally and personally, because when you ask the question, if you're a leader enough to ask, make sure you're a leader enough to listen. Don't ask a question, and then when they give you a response, you want to either defend, dukes up, hey, I already do that, or what, or deflect and never speak to them again because you were offended by what they said they needed. So if you're leader enough to ask, please be leader enough to listen. And you don't have to respond right away. Actually, it's best don't respond right away.
Yeah, and that's something that you and I share as a value, is that idea that leadership isn't a role, it's an act, it's a verb, it's something we do. And what was coming up for me too is because I've had people in my life who are really skillful at this, because it can be hard. It can be hard when if you're stressed or overwhelmed, your brain isn't thinking logically. It isn't necessarily thinking, it can't problem solve in the same way. That sometimes you need other people to help you problem solve because you just can't. Or maybe you feel like you're the only one who can do it. Now, sometimes that can come from a place of control, but sometimes it can just come from a place of fear and doubt of like, well, I don't want to burden them, because what would that mean? Or what would that say about me? And my colleague, Teresa, I was in a really emotionally depleted time. We had just put down our first dog, and just really tough emotionally, but had a big day of speaking and workshops. And she just said, what can I do to help? And sometimes it's hard for me to answer that. And I said, if you could, what did I say? If you could just help me think through this middle section, because I have the opening keynote, closing keynote. Those have been locked in a while. This workshop, I thought I was going to have the weekend, and then obviously that didn't happen. But she kept asking, because she kind of knew that we weren't getting to the place of ease or relief for where I was. And she just beautifully kept saying okay, yeah, no, I can help with that. What else would be helpful? What would actually be really helpful? And her willingness to ask and that willingness to receive, finally, finally I said, this is huge, but would you help me co-facilitate? I know it's tomorrow, but having a lead goose with me, having someone with me in this would actually be really helpful. And she was like, yep, absolutely. And it ended up being this like amazing experience for her and the audience. And I mean, so this beautiful thing was born out of her really paying attention to, I think you need something that you're not asking for. I'm going to keep asking to get it. And how many times, right? Like how many times do we sense or we feel like, oh, there's a lot on their plate, but then we don't take action on it.
One of the concepts, if you are ever in a position of leadership, people say that leadership is lonely. And I will say that. It is lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I appreciate the most is someone inviting me somewhere for something I don't have to lead. Mm-hmm. And so as leaders, we have to be mindful enough and aware enough to accept the invitation and go, or let them do something and lead. You don't have to lead everything. You don't have to. So when you don't have to do that and you can give someone else the crown and the honor, sometimes we have to be mindful to let that happen. And it could be in the smallest of ways. For example, two things for me. Friend of mine asked, hey, do you want to come over for the game? When you're a leader, when you're an entrepreneur, when you are super successful, you eventually get to a point where most people who reach out to you want something from you.
Yeah.
They want advice. They want to connect to pick your brain. That's my favorite. Mm-hmm. And I don't mind the brain picking. I don't. However, every now and then, or it's a business transaction, every now and then it's nice for somebody to simply ask you how you are. How are you doing? And genuinely care. And that's why I tell Frontline, when I meet with Frontline, your leaders are people too. Frontline have this belief that because their boss makes a few more dollars than them and have 200 plus more emails, that everything is fine. They shouldn't have a complaint. They should know everything. Do you know the value that a Frontline employee would have if they simply say, hey, how was your day? Or did you catch the game? Or, do you have plans for the weekend? For my son, who's a player, to ask his coach, hey, how you doing today, coach? How'd you like the game? No, most people don't talk to the leaders like that. Mm-mm. And a friend of mine asked, can you come and watch the game? I said, the fact that I get to sit on somebody else's couch and I don't have to read anything. Or I'll go to a networking event, and it's probably a couple times a year now. When I first started the business, everybody does the local networking event. You do your 30-second commercial pitch. Like anybody wants to hear you rattle on for 30 seconds about your business. Okay, well, that's a whole nother story. I made myself laugh on that one. But
I know those events intimately.
right. And we all started off there. And there's no knock on them. But if you can cut that down to a 10-second instead of a 30-second, they'll do yourself a favor in the world. But every now and then I'll go to one. And not the traditional one, more so like the networking night where it's hors d'oeuvres. And I say, I simply want to go because I just want to be in the room and just be around my peer. I don't have to sell my business anymore. I just want to meet people and chill and not be, it's an honor to get to the level where people want so many things from you. However, it's so nice just to be a part of something.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, what you're presenting, and what I really appreciate and love about it is also another way of thinking about that recovery, thinking about that self-care, whether you are leading your own business, whether you're a manager, whether you are even just a parent, right? Like there are times when some of my parent friends are just like, I just kind of need to talk to an adult. Like or one of my really close friends, whenever we go out to eat, she said, can we just always go somewhere where like I can be served and I don't have to do the serving? And I think that that's a really great, because sometimes I feel like we either oversimplify or we put self-care in categories that are very limited.
Yes.
Right? Of like, okay, go to the spa or, go for a run and not just counting those, but I love that nuance that you're presenting of, because, and I feel that there are times where I go, I have a group of high school friends from high school, and we get together and we do trips. And one of the things that I love is I said, I love that I just get to be
Just
Sarah.
get to be me. I'm so glad
I
you went
just
there
get
because
to be me.
every other month I have a group of three, so it's four of us, from college, so college buddies. Every other month we plan, and it doesn't always go as that, but we rotate living rooms. So we'll go to somebody's
Mm,
living room. You can have drinks and a cigar, or watch a game or something. And in that group, I'm simply Dre. I am not the author, Andre. I am not the leadership trainer. Nobody's worried about how much money I'm in. It's just, and I just sit there, I say the least and I giggle the most, and it is just
yeah.
fun. It's fun. It's just, it takes you back. Now, on alternating months, I get together my entrepreneur friends.
Yeah.
And when I get with them, it's idea filled. It's I pick up business gems that I never would have gotten, and it's not because it's purposeful that way. That's just how we speak. So my
Yeah.
whole rule for anybody I hang out with. So now I put me in my calendar, and
Mm.
I put alerts to it. It's in there. It's always a light at the end of the tunnel. My rule for whoever I hang out with, whether it's my high school friends, my entrepreneur friends, or the world, I want to feel fun filled, idea filled, lucky to be there and have an enjoyable experience. Like, I want to be thinking that way before I leave to go, while I'm there, and after I return. If all three of those boxes are not checked, I don't hang out with them. Like, so I need to feel idea filled, inspired, and lucky before, during, and after. And if not, that's not my group.
I I love all of that. I'm as you were talking, I was thinking about like, yeah, the Marie Kondo version of our life. Does this give me joy? If it doesn't, then let it go. And that one, life is too short for obligations, and especially for those people who are in um, formal leadership roles, you are giving a lot, or informal leadership roles, right? Like, again, parents or leading in your community or taking care of a loved one or whatever that might look like is what gives you energy, and it, I one of the gifts of the pandemic is that I think it forced so many of us to question our values, to question, how do I want to spend my time? I found myself going, I literally lost out on basically 2 years with the most precious people in my life. And that helped me set that boundary, because that's really hard to set that boundary, because you don't want to be like, sorry, I'm just not excited thinking about hanging out with you. You don't need to say that. You don't need to be like, oh, I can't attend because I'm literally like only going to attend out of obligation. But getting really clear about, right now I'm spending time with, my family, really close friends, and work. And that's where I've built up, I'm building up, I should say, that muscle to set some of those boundaries. And for me, I know, like, if I start to feel obligated, I need to get out of there, because not only will I not feel at my best, but I will not show up and give my best. And one of the things that, again, I love talking about these different ways that recovery can look, is that the other trap I think that we fall into when we think about self-care is we think of it as a solo sport. And for sometimes that needs to be the case. Sometimes that, like you mentioned your wife, and my husband is the same way. Like, he's much more introverted than I am. He needs more time solo. And sometimes recovery is he and I being together and doing something quiet. And so I think that's the other thing that's been an evolution. And what I love about the examples you're sharing is, and recover, like, use your language, like what energizes you, what gives you fun, what makes you excited. So you're
Oh,
excited to go, excited to
there's
be,
a
and
word.
excited to leave. It's such a
Fun
gift.
is a word that we don't talk about enough,
Mm,
because it's ever evolving for us all. And there's been times when you ever look up one day and say, what's fun for me?
mm,
Like, I've lost my definition of fun multiple times in my life, because you're on autopilot doing what you love to do or have to do. And
yeah,
the definition of fun for me has changed, thank goodness, from when I was 16 to when I was in my
sure.
20s to when I was in my 30s, and now in my 40s and headed into my 50s. It's okay that it changes, but do you know the definition?
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget.
Mm.
I'll look up and say, what do I really like doing? And I got to
Mm.
sit back and think because it's not much. I
Mhm.
like traveling. I like seeing new places. I prefer to see them with my wife. Um, I like smoking cigars. I like going to the gym, but I wouldn't say it's fun. It's something
Sure.
that I do. So when I look at what's fun for me, it's not a lot of things. And the
Yeah.
things that I mentioned are not these super expensive, extravagant things. It really comes down to quality time. I love languages, quality time,
Mhm.
and I love being able to take my family out to eat. I got four
Mm.
kids. To get everybody sitting at the table and getting along, it's awesome. I created all of you, and to sit at a table and sit there, it's awesome. That's fun. So really reevaluating every now and then what's fun, and then knowing the people around you, what's their definition of fun. That's leadership too. How do
Yeah.
you create and
Mm.
enjoy a little bit of their fun? How do you join them in their fun? You know, so or at least encourage it. The things that are fun for my wife are not fun for me at all. Like
Sure.
she wants to do whitewater rafting. I said, I'll see you when you get back. Like that is, I am not getting on that raft. But I'll
Yeah.
encourage you. I'll videotape it.
Well, it's that's such a good example of really healthy relationships. One of the ways the Gottman Institute has talked about how they can identify with incredible accuracy the health of a relationship based off of how they turn towards each other. Right? Like somebody makes a bid, I like this, and you go, "Oh, but that doesn't mean I have to do it with you." It's like, "I love, you go, I'll support. What do you need? I'll take care of the kids."
Right? I'll get
But
T-shirts made up with your name and face and the rapids. I'll get it all.
there, we don't and I know it's hard, and it depends on your living situation. It depends on your life circumstance. There is so much power in that joy, right? There's so much power in laughter, and I know when things are in harmony, right, or like a good integration, whatever the language is. When I feel, and my husband would probably agree with this, when there's a higher level of sort of silliness in our relationship, right? Like we're teasing each other, we're making goofy jokes that only he and I, and it's something that it's like I'm trying not to chase busyness anymore. I'm trying to chase ease, which is ironic. Like that's not the right language, but like ease and joy, and I love that question for all of us to ask is like, when was the last time that you had a lot of fun? Or what are the things, and to be unapologetic about it? Because again, I think sometimes we feel, going back to your bullying words, right? Like, let's bring it full circle. Like, oh, that's stupid that brings me joy, or that's stupid that's something that but we have our own manual, right? Like,
Yeah.
and be okay that you like cigars and I really like playing my accordion. And that's something that brings me. And for me, it's not just playing the accordion. It's actually more specific. It's getting to play my accordion from my parents, who they just love it so much. And so, like when I'm having a rough day, this is a good reminder for myself. Is like, what are those things that are like what do I love? And to be a little I mean, as long as it's not hurting or harming
Like,
someone
yeah, it's
else,
not hurting it. So, and
just
then
own it.
people around you. So when you don't should their fun,
Yeah.
hopefully you set a model for them not to should
Mm,
yours. Well, you shouldn't
mm,
need to do that. You shouldn't need to leave the house to do that.
mm.
You shouldn't need to do that because I want to fulfill you, or you should be fulfilled by this, this, and this. Well, see how should can start to, because what should really does mean is I would like for you or us to dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
I would like for me to be enough fun for you.
Mm,
Would you
mm,
like to do with me moving forward? That's what should really
mm,
means, but we don't
mm,
use that language.
mm,
That's what
mhm.
you should have did this. Well, moving forward, I would like for you to dot dot dot. That's what should means, and that's fair to
Yeah.
say. Moving
Yeah.
forward, I would like for us to do this. What will it take for that to happen?
I love it. My friend, we can keep talking, but I want to be thoughtful of your time, and you've given us lots of gifts. I do want to ask you the question that we ask everyone before we officially wrap up. This whole show is about conversations we have with ourselves and others, and what I really appreciate the specificity of the language that you have given and the questions we can ask. And so people can see what it looks like and they can try it on, right? And find the language for them. But for you, my friend, talk to us, and you can share as much as little, whatever you want to, around a conversation you've had with yourself or with someone else that was transformative for you.
Man, the last big one happened a couple of years ago. I always talk to myself, by the way. Like
Sure.
my daughter, it was so funny when we first got married. My wife was like, "Who are you talking to?" She thought I was talking on the phone. So I said, so now we just know I talk to myself and I answer myself. World, it's okay. So when I first started my business, I was gung ho. I'm full speed ahead, and it was everything that I wanted to do. However, it wasn't making a lot of money. You start any business, you're not making money, and then you're reinvesting the money, and then
Right.
so we all go through those phases. 10 years to be an overnight success. And I remember it being very stressful for my wife and I. I'm willing to die to do this, but we still have family to feed. We still got a lot of things going on. And I remember standing in the mirror, both in the bathroom, and I remember looking myself in the mirror, and that moment I vowed to be successful. I vowed to make money. I vowed to support my family with what I do and what I love and get wealthy doing it. I remember it. So I'm big on, I talked about marriage, leaders marry what they want to do and give with ... However, leaders also marry themselves.
Yeah.
Most of us will stand at an altar and make vows to another person that barely knows themselves, or we barely know ourselves, and we'll make these vows before we've ever even thought of making a vow to us. And I made a vow that day, and I wrote it in marker right on my mirror in the bathroom, and I said, I vow to succeed. And so, in my trainings and in speaking engagements, I talk about your vision. Now, here's the pro and concern about your vision, whatever you're vowing or whatever conversation you're having. The pro is you have one. The concern about it is that it's cute and it does nothing for you. It inspired me. Okay, I vow to be successful. Well, what the heck does that mean? So that's your vision, but what are your vision factors? The 3 to 5 things that when you do them consistently, the vision has to take care of itself. So my vow is to get successful and become the best in the world in my space and get wealthy doing it. Well, my 3 things that I found that worked was, 1, I needed to create great content. So whether it's books, videos, articles, training programs, whatever. 2, I needed to network appropriately. I can't be doing the 30-second commercial anymore. I've outgrown that experience. So I needed to network, and not only broaden the network, but who was going to be my network? And what do they want from me? How do they want to consume what I have to give? Then 3, I needed passive income opportunities. Initially starting off in your lane. Most people want passive income, and passive doesn't mean passive. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. And it's really hard to do anything when you don't even know what that thing is. So create passive income opportunities already in your field of knowledge, and then expand out. So once I started focusing on those 3 things, and everything I said yes to had to fit in there. And now I know a great way to tell somebody no, because, hey, this is where I'm going. Can you fit your idea inside this box? If so, great. If not, this is where I'm going, maybe next year.
Yeah.
And it changed everything. There's that saying, you can't change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction. That singular moment changed everything.
I love that. And, and invite everyone who's listening to think about, what's the vow you want to make? It is interesting that we do make that. I mean, we make that public commitment if we are moving towards the realm of marriage, right? We make that public commitment to the other person and say, this is how I'm going to show up for you. And I love that practice of, but how am I showing up for me? And what's that vow for me? And so I love that so much. Andre, thank you so much for coming on the show and bringing your insights and your wisdom and your lived experience. I know there are people who are listening who want to learn more about how they can connect with you, learn from you, grow with what you do. So, give us, you ready? Give me the 30-second. I'm just kidding. I couldn't resist.
That's
but what's the best way for people to learn about the great services you offer, the products that you have, and the ways that you can support people not only in their personal leadership, but also their leadership at work? What's the best way to connect with you?
Best way to connect is youevolvingnow.com. So it's YOU evolvingnow.com. You go there, everything that you're looking for is there, whether it's from free videos. My books are there. So I've had 4 books, 2 on leadership. The online program is there that you can use for your company and onboarding processes and all of that. And obviously my email. Reach out. I love to Zoom with people. I love to get on the chat to say, hey, how are you? Who are you? What would you like to get out of speaking with me today or anything? And let's chat and build and customize, create and enjoy it. So that's the best way that I would say.
Awesome. And we will put, as always, all of those links and resources in the show notes for you to check out. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I appreciate you. Our guest this week has been Andre Young, and there's so much insights and practical tips and tricks that he gave us, not only for how we can make sure we put ourselves on the calendar, but what does it look like to have those conversations? I particularly love that analogy of what's the vow to yourself. We give the vows to our spouses, if that's our choice, and even to our kids. Here's the commitments we're going to make to work. Here's the commitment I'm making for you, the agreement, the contract. But what's the contract we sign for ourselves? So that is definitely something I'm going to be chewing on, is what's the vow that I want to make to myself. And we want to hear from you. What resonated? Maybe you want to share with us, what vow are you making? What did you think about when we asked the question, how do you like to have fun? We would love to hear that. So you can send us an email at podcast@sarahnollwilson.com. You can also send me a DM on social media, where my DMs are always open. And if you'd like to have a conversation about how we can help your team have conversations that matter, be sure to reach out to us at sarahnollwilson.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Don't Feed the Elephants, wherever books are sold. And if you'd like to support the show, there's 2 ways you can do that. The first is to become a patron of the show. You can do that by going to patreon.com/conversationsonconversations, where your financial support will support the amazing team that makes this show possible, and you'll get access to some pretty great swag. Also, if you haven't, you can rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platform. That actually helps the algorithm to help our show be seen more, so we can bring on really great guests like Andre Young. I want to do a big shout out to our team that makes this show possible, to our producer, Nick Wilson, our sound editor, Drew Knoll, our transcriptionist, Becky Reiner, our marketing consultant, Caitlin Summit Nelson, and the rest of the Snowco crew. And a final thank you to our guest today, Andre Young. He is certainly a motivator, but what I appreciate is that motivation is followed up with really good tips and tricks and practices that we can do so we can show up and lead more powerfully in our lives. So be sure to check out his work. This has been Conversations on Conversations. Thank you all so much for listening, for showing up for us and for yourself. And remember, when we change the conversations we have with ourselves and others, we can change the world. So be sure to rest, rehydrate, and we'll see you again next week.